DAH project from Shiraz, KounAktif from Casablanca, BAAB from Khartoum, Shahraban from Baalbek, Bishkek Contemporary from Bishkek, ADEF from Cairo and Berlin, and Darağaç from Izmir. What is Darağaç? Darağaç is a non-profit art collective located in Izmir Umurbey neighborhood and in an open space where new communication strategies are experienced. Umurbey neighborhood, formerly known as Darağaç, is located between Alsancak Stadium and Halkapınar, used as an industrial zone in the past. Today, Darağaç neighborhood hosts art, workshops, and residents. Darağaç is also the name of the group of exhibitions that have developed and matured with an atmosphere of an intense dialogue and discussions between artists, artisans, and the residents of the neighborhood. Darağaç has not imposed any subject and limitations for the artists in the exhibitions it has organized and in the events it has participated in. Darağaç encourages the artists to try new methods in the public sphere. Interdisciplinary works are exhibited or hosted in Darağaç in areas such as painting, photography, sculpture, installation, video, and performance. At the same time, Darağaç is trying to transform into a kind of an experimental city institute. Today, we are going to talk about collective's role in Izmir with Tom Keogh, Ali Kemal Ertem, and Hande Bozbıyık. Welcome, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Who would like to start first? Tom, Ali Kemal?
Okay.
Introduce yourself.
Okay, well, very quickly, to introduce the projects. We've actually been going here. Myself and my partner bought a house in this area about 10 years ago. And for a period of about 3.5, 4 years, we actually ran an art residency program here, also with some exhibitions in relation to local art events, local art actions, etc. We have been closed for a number of years because it's our own house, and we decided to draw back a little bit. We've just acquired a new premises, which we'll talk about in a minute. I do have a presentation. We can actually start that now and go through it very quickly, if that's appropriate at the moment, to tell you exactly what Maquis is about, and hopefully there will be something to explain our attitude towards collectivity, etc. I think Izmir is quite an interesting place because the art scene is quite cohesive. So the art scene itself and the various people who are involved in it is almost a collective in itself. You can always rely on people to do stuff and help you at certain points.
Hande, you can get the...
Oh, sorry, Hande, you haven't introduced yourself.
Hello again, everyone. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me here. My name is Hande Bozbıyık, and I'm a teacher, and I've been working for national education for 16 years, and since 2018, I'm in a book writing commission. We are preparing course books for high school students. I live in Izmir since 2000, and I'm a huge fan of contemporary arts. And today I am going to share my own personal experience about my role in the communities and how did it all change my life.
Today, actually, we have many things to discuss, but let me just briefly explain the Kemeraltı neighborhood, if I may. Kemeraltı neighborhood is one of the oldest neighborhood in Izmir. It has many shopping areas, but it's also the historical shopping center of Izmir. And Darağaç is also another neighborhood, an old neighborhood. It's an old industrial area, and I think we have some common grounds and we have some future projects and collaborations. And if you like, Tom and Ali Kemal, would you like to start your presentation?
Okay, now
let's start. We have to do the technological bit now.
Sure.
Okay, this one, share. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay. And
are you seeing it full screen, or how are you seeing it? Just as
you seen it?
Yeah.
Is that okay now? Okay. So again, Kemal based art residency. Kemal is what I suppose you would, it is a very historic area going back a long way and has a lot of layers. It's something that I will talk about later on in relation to what we are getting involved in more recently in relation to Maquis projects. This is just some of the stuff that I was involved in before I came to Izmir. Meals and SUVs, this was an organization that I ran with. It's a small organization, an exhibition space and a residency space in London, Meals and SUVs, where we constantly had activity, we had exhibitions, etc. So it was kind of my starting point in relation to working with artists, working collectively. This is also a project that I did collectively, kind of a trip that I made from London to Beijing, building these various tents with the German artist Tobias Rehberger along the way. And I also again did this with a group of friends, colleagues, etc. So, okay, so this is actually the street where we acquired the house. You can see it here on the left. This is the street, very attractive street, but again, very economically disadvantaged, I suppose is the best way to put it. But it's an interesting area because, as a friend of mine in Turkey said when we moved in here, in relation to say, why is that jumping ahead like that? I mean, if you compare it to economically disadvantaged areas in a place like London, in areas like this in London, you would have huge actual unemployment, people who would just not be working. Whereas in Izmir, Inanu, and these areas, everybody works. It may be very low level. It's very, kind of, they have very little money coming in, but everybody has this kind of idea of working, of looking after themselves, etc. So it's a very different kind of vibe that you get here in areas like this than you would get in disadvantaged areas in large sort of Western European countries. And I think as well as that, that's another thing about Darağaç as well. It's very much an area where you have workshops, people, they kind of have shit jobs. I mean, let's be really honest about it. Right?
Textile workers.
For textile workers, etc. Very little money coming in, but nonetheless, everybody works and everybody is very busy and everybody kind of, that's the situation with the area. I mean, again, we talk about sort of, kind of the idea of art organizations going into areas like this. I mean, let's be really honest with ourselves. We go in because it's cheap. It's a place where we can get this. I mean, I could very easily have bought myself a small flat or a large old house like this, where we had the space for artist residency, where we had the space for exhibition space, etc. Very central, very central. I mean, it's following a kind of almost like a template that, kind of in relation to city center areas in the last sort of 50 years, in relation to the sort of pressures on acquiring space, rental space, etc. There's a huge pressure internationally because of population growth, because of kind of neoliberal policies. There's a huge pressure in relation to rental space, in relation to acquiring space that kind of that artists and cultural workers have really only noticed about 40 years ago when it started to affect them for the first time. So this has almost become like a cliche of what we're doing, but hey, it works. And again, similar to what the people in Darağaç are doing, it's cheap rents. Kind of we have to be really honest about that. That is one of the it's central and it's cheap. And again, we also have to kind of admit that often we are sort of starting agents of gentrification. I mean, this is well known at this stage as well. So there's lots of problematics about what we're doing, lots of sort of interesting aspects to discuss, lots of opportunities, lots of advantages, etc. So just again, this is a friend of ours, Firat Erdem, who was very much an inspiration as well in relation to starting a small art gallery, art activity space over in the Karşıyaka area of Izmir. He ran that for about 2 years there, and he was and again, he really kind of showed what you could do with very little. And I think that's something as well that kind of collectives are very good at, because when you have people helping you, when you have people supporting each other, you can do stuff. I mean, there's always this thing of, kind of within arts organizations and smart art organizations that they hold themselves back until they get funding. And it's like, oh, we're applying for this funding, and if we don't get it, we're not going to do it. There's always two budgets. There's the funding if you get, there's the funding, there's always two budgets. The budgets if you get the funding, and the budget if you don't get the funding. So collectives, and again, the sort of support that I mentioned earlier on, that Maquis Project and Darağaç as well, I know, that we get from the local community, the art community, the students, you know, kind of the people who are teaching in the universities, etc., and the local people, the local people themselves, the workshops, etc., kind of giving us discounts, etc. When you're doing stuff like this and people see that you have good intentions and that you are trying to do something positive and you're trying to create an area where people come together for conversations about, you know, kind of important, about culture, about politics, about society, people can be very, very generous. And this is one of the advantages, of course, of collective activity. It's also one of the advantages of living in economically deprived areas. I mean, quite frankly, I mean, for arts groups and individuals to work in these areas and to be struggling economically, local businesses and people, they understand you. You do have that connection with them, actually. They actually also are economically struggling. So it's a kind of a good fit from that point of view. Again, just some more of the stuff we've been doing over the years, kind of various installation work. We had a piece of graffiti going in one of the walls inside, performance work, etc. So this is just the ongoing of the various projects that we had. This was not our project. This was Kemal Ertem intervention. This was another group of artists coming together as a collective again, and it was kind of nice because the same as summer that we opened up, they actually had this kind of artists interventions, artist artwork being done in exactly the same area as well. So there was a really nice synergy there as well between their collective and what we were doing. So again, even though we're just the two of us running this space, and you know, kind of, you could say that we are Maquis, we have always had a lot of synergy. We have always had a lot of relationships. We've always had a lot of connections, and it's sort of, you know, kind of the groups of people who came to visit us, to see the works that we were doing here, to help us. Again, when I'm looking at these photographs here, I see people who not only came to see the exhibitions, but people who would have helped doing drawings or setting up tables or running an errand at the last minute that you needed. You know, can you go down and, you know, we forgot to get such and such, can you go running down or whatever like that. Again, this is another group that we worked with, Dergi. Again, this was creating sort of artists' books, etc. Again, just some more of this stuff that we're doing. Sorry, maybe again, we always had a focus as well, though, on individual artwork. I mean, there was never a thing here where we want you to do community work. We want you to do stuff with the local people. We want you to do stuff that is socially things. Very much sort of, again, so we had a lot of artists whose work was very, very material based in relation to what they were doing as a very, very personal practice. Again, just some more work from different artists that we had. Again, we had a lot of fun as well. We had a lot of really, really interesting work being created. And again, the work itself became the generation for conversations, and not just about art, but about lots of other things as well. So again, I think that's one of the advantages of a place like Maquis and also Darağaç, you know, kind of the synergies that they create, the conversations they create, the energies and the possibilities that they create. Okay, arts prints, again, working with local artists, and future artists, again, this was just before the pandemic, before we closed, and also we were supposed to open again last year, but unfortunately with the pandemic we weren't able to do that. Oh, talks, residencies, etc. That's always been a large part of what we do. Okay, now to get to something that I know Ali Cem wants to talk about as well, is something that, as part of our, again, we closed about 4 years ago. We closed at the same time as the coup happened. It really was just a difficult time at that time. But also we were uncomfortable, particularly with that sort of political situation, with the fact that our own home was being used as this public space. So we decided to stand back at that stage. However, we have acquired another premises, which we will be starting up as a gallery and residency space soon. And we actually have a front space to that, which we plan to turn into a demonstration garden. So something that we're very interested in, like, I mean, we have been involved with this local organization, Compost. It's actually kind of being run by a different group of people now, or kind of that have taken it over. So we're not as heavily involved with that anymore. But also we have this local refugee center, Yashimak, where we actually planned a herb garden for them, working with the people there, etc. So one of the things that we are looking at and that we see as a huge opportunity for art institutions, art centers, is this idea of food production. Again, working with ecological issues, working with kind of environmental issues, which we think is so important now. So this will be one of the focuses when we open up again. Again, we have a French artist coming soon who is going to be working on a local rewilding and food project. And this is something that we've talked with the local Belediye about as well. Again, along with the local organization Compost, Maquis is hoping to work on and the Belediye, we're hoping to be working on the creation of a community garden. This is a new premise. Again, as you can see, kind of we're still getting. It was kind of good that we didn't start last year, because we would have had to sort of probably get a loan at that stage to get stuff finished. So because we had an extra year, we were able to do things a little bit more slowly in relation to getting the spaces ready. Again, you can see here there was a garden space in the front of it where we will be having a demonstration garden for herbs, for local foraging, for local foodstuffs. Upstairs, we will have a residency space where an artist can stay, and they will have a workspace. We will have a kitchen. We will have exhibition spaces downstairs. Eventually, in about 5 years' time, we plan to sort of, hopefully, if everything goes okay, we plan to upgrade the whole space considerably. But at the moment, we are working with what we have in the space itself. Okay, something that we have broadened as well. Again, on the right here, you can see a plan that we made of the entire area, looking at areas that are already park areas. Looking at areas, again, we have a number of plans as well where we're doing an entire research on the area at the moment in relation to things like soil, planting, kind of cultural organizations, educational organizations. And one of the things we want to do as well is to create a living library. I know you may be familiar with that idea. A living library in relation to the history, the natural history of the area, the kind of the various historical kind of epochs, etc. Like, for example, we would have a number of Roman water viaducts going in underneath, not viaducts, channels going in underneath the space, etc. So again, this is just sort of a rough kind of map that we're looking at as well, where we're trying to look back and see what the area was like, kind of before it was ever settled by people. For example, there's actually a river that flows right through the middle of this study area, or this local area where we live, right in the middle. This is where the gallery is here. And basically to look at water sources, but there was a river that has been covered over, and you can still hear it. As you're standing over it, you can still hear this roaring river flowing in underneath this area. So we really are committed. I would say, that Maquis is very committed to this area in relation to developing in the future something that we feel we didn't do the first time around in the first phase of Maquis projects, developing a more subtle understanding of what the area is, the groups of people that are here, and hopefully through these rewilding projects, through these garden projects. We are actually already doing a project with Goethe Institute in May now, where we have students in a university here and in Batman working on the creation of social sculptures, Boysian social sculptures in this area as well, to look at sort of the possibility of creating spaces, kind of conversation, of kind of political action, or whatever you want to call it. Again, all of these things are quite difficult, I think, to consider in some respects, because there are so many issues of how you relate to kind of the people who are outside the immediate sphere of the art practitioners and the cultural practitioners. But I do think that this is something that is very important nowadays. I think we are moving into an era in the world where the idea of community projects and food stability projects and are really, really important. and I think a lot of art institutions as well are becoming aware that they can have a role in these developments. Okay, so that's basically me finished. Kemal, do you want to add something?
It's fine.
Yeah, thank you. So the urban gardening project that initiated by Maquis, for us, for Darağaç, it was a sparkle for us too. So we decided to turn a parking lot, a green area. I mean, it looks green, but it's a parking lot, and we decided to turn this lot into a garden as well. So I wanted to ask, but before that, Hande, would you like to add something? Yeah.
Now, in terms of urban gardening, I can just add a little bit something because you know, Maquis projects, Tom and Ali Kemal, they keep inspiring me in many ways in my life, you know, and this urban gardening project inspired me a lot. Again, that with the motivation I got from Tom and Ali Kemal, I've started trying it in my balcony because I live in an apartment, so I don't have any garden place. So, and now I'm growing some tomato and green pepper seeds, and hopefully they will give fruits this summer. You know, fingers crossed. So we'll see what will happen.
We haven't started planting yet, but hopefully we will start soon. So yeah, Tom and Ali Kemal, I would like to ask about the reactions of your neighbors. What was their reactions, and how do they participate in the process?
An artwork.
I would actually have to say that it's really been a learning process. I think it's something that you really have to be careful about when you're getting involved in. And we've been doing a lot of research. I mean, we went into this in a very naive, kind of very, very hopeful manner. A lot of people are, we actually made a lot of sort of planters for the street, etc. And I would have to say that we became a little bit disillusioned with the process. We still are keeping on with it. But one thing, like, because I know, like, I mean, we've actually, from watching stuff, that I know, for example, that in the USA and in France, they're very strongly developed. If we're going to be talking about community gardens, not community gardens related to art practice, but just from the point of view of community gardens, that many of the Belladiers, many of the councils in France, in Paris in particular, they're very supportive, and in America as well, in many of the cities, of local groups who want to start up a community garden. But they will never give a space, or they will never give funding unless there is a minimum of 10 people who are completely committed to the idea. And I think this is such a really, really important thing. Somebody was saying that if you have 10 people committed, there's a good chance that 4 people will actually get involved. So this was something that really, we found a lot of people on the street were so enthusiastic. And it's like, please give us this thing. We'd love to have that. And we gave them a box, and we said to them, you have to, I'm going to be really honest now. I'll explain the sort of problematics. And we said to them, oh, but you have to paint them and you have to get soil for them. And then they came back and they said, oh, we have to, when we gave it to them, they said, we have to paint them. And we said, yeah, we talked about this beforehand. We told you have to paint them. And they go, we don't have any paint. So we ended up painting, and then we had people saying, oh, I don't know how do I go about painting? We literally ended up painting them there and providing all the paint as well. And we had a lot of paint left over here in Maquis projects from other projects, so it wasn't a difficult thing. Then we had said to them, well, you need to get soil for it. And then it was like, we don't have any soil. So we ended up digging up our garden from the new building and using that, the soil from our garden, for everybody's thing. And at the end of it, they said, oh, we don't have any plants. At this stage, I swear to God, I was nearly losing my brain with this. You know, I mean, so we also went and we kind of helped people get plants, and you know, kind of we took so much stuff from our own garden that we already had, and it was a real thing. And then we said, great, you know, now people will look after it. And people just haven't been. Some people. There's one guy up the street, Mesut, and he's fantastic. He is absolutely fantastic. I mean, if we were in Paris or New York, right? And Serkan is really good as well. Serkan and Omar are super as well. The Serkan in particular, the front is wonderful. But everybody else, it's as if, and again, they came to us and said, "Can we have one of those boxes?" You know, we didn't push them on it or whatever like that. They were like, "Oh, we'd love one of them. Can we have one as well?" And we specifically let out you have to do this. And I actually really think it's a problem that and I blame sort of the world we live in now, that people have become totally dependent. They've become passive. There's something really strange, and people have to be shaken out of this in some respects. And they have to realize that you cannot just talk about sort of having a better world. You have to actually do something about it yourself. You really, really do. So this has been very discouraging for us, and in some respects. But I mean, we've decided though that from the point of view of the street here itself, we are going to kind of keep maintaining the plants, and hopefully more people. Maybe it's just a thing that they just can't. And for example, in some of them, there's food growing. There's cabbages and lettuces and onions. They won't eat them. They don't think it's good eating stuff off the street. It's like, oh, it's dirty or something. It's like you've got a meal in your front of your house, and you're afraid of it. So, and again, I think there's some really, I don't want to be saying, you know, kind of people are bad, but there is really something that people want to be a part of the outside, but something has happened that people are afraid of their own streets. I really think people are afraid of their own streets in some respects, and so it's been a real learning process. But we decided that we're going to keep going on with this street itself, and talking to people and organizing things on this street, etc., and looking after the planters that we have. And I think that will be fine. But originally there was this idea of extending to other streets, and really, I mean, me and Kemal are not going to get involved in that, because it's been this learning process. You know, we had somebody from another street saying to us, "Oh, we'd love, can you please give us one of these boxes?" And we went up to their house, and the front of their house was literally covered with weeds, you know. And we said to them, "Oh, do you ever think of cleaning those weeds?" And they were like, "Oh, what weeds?" And it's like, if you cannot pick a few weeds from the front of your house, we are going to give you this box and there will be nothing in it. So it's been a little bit, I hope you don't mind me telling this story as a negative thing. Because at the same time, I mean, I actually went to visit Istanbul 2 weeks ago, and I went to visit a number of community gardens there, and I was very heartened because they really do work. But there's so much interesting politics going on. I went to one of them, İmrahor, which is completely created by the Belediye. They built it. They built it. It's a beautiful place. It's not a real community garden from the point of view of it's the Belediye that are controlling it, if you know what I mean. But nonetheless, people have their plots and they're going in there, and it's a really good start to make people realize that they can do that. And it would be lovely if you could see that being a model for other people to say, "Hey, listen, we can do this as well. Let's get together and find these places, etc." And then another interesting thing, I went to 2 more interesting places. What's the name of the first one I would have went to? It's a really famous one. I went to Yedi. Well, I went to Yedikule, which was amazing. I mean, Yedikule, I mean, as you know, it's got these historic gardens there that people have owned, and that they're open and you can walk in around it as the public. They're right beside the old Theodosian walls. They go back to the 1453. They're incredible, and I'm really happy that they're part of this UNESCO. And again, you can see how I mean, because I know that the Belediye were starting to destroy them, and they were UNESCO and other international organizations came in and said, "You've got to stop this. This is part of the intangible heritage there." So they are protected now, and that's absolutely wonderful. And I hope to see them. I hope they extend them, and it becomes part of a whole revitalization of that area. So historically, again, we can look back to the history as well in relation to these sort of gardens. But there was another garden which is it's a large garden, Kuzguncu. And that was really interesting because I went there with a friend, and we were really excited about going there because it's one of the ones that you read about all the time. And there's been a lot of sort of protests there. They wanted to destroy it and put apartment blocks, and the local people protested, the people who were and it was very interesting. We went there, and it was nicely built by the Belediye, but all of the plots were completely empty. And we asked the guy who was there, and he said, "Oh, the original people who were gardening here, they were all kicked out, and the Belediye decided to be really democratic, to have a lottery so that anybody locally could go to the gardens. So of course you had thousands of people who thought, as our neighbors here, oh, we'd love to have a garden. So basically they had a lottery, and it was like, sort of, oh, we're doing this in a completely fair way, you know, kind of, so we're gonna, you know, kind of whatever like that. And it was none of the people who won the lottery came to the gardens to look after them. And they're in a kind of a hiatus now, they don't know what to do. So there's this, so that's a really interesting kind of story as well in relation to, if you have committed people, like, I mean, the guy that we found up the street, Serkan and Omar, they're so wonderful to work with. And again, you know, kind of, I would just want to say to the local people, you know, just accept you're not gardeners. It's fine. It's okay if you're not a gardener. Just say you're not a gardener, you know. But finding some people who are and who want to do that, and who are willing as well to have it as an open space where anybody from the community can come in and enjoy the space, and it can become a seating area, which is what you see in Imrahor, by the way. It's an open space. They have rules or whatever like that, but you have lovely areas that people can go in to sort of sit and have tea, and you can hang your coat there and all that sort of thing. So it does work. It really, really does work. But you cannot go in sort of dewy-eyed, thinking that everybody's going to be, and you have to be careful about the people you pick to work with. I'm sorry, I have to say that. I really, really have to say that. Oh, sorry, I'm talking too much.
No, you're not. Actually,
one more thing. Sorry, I just want to add to that as well. Out in the west of the city near Halkali, I also went to this where they have all these new skyscrapers and these new areas and these mega mosques and mega superstores and all of that sort of thing. They also had a mega, it was really nice because the area is so new and so sort of strange with all of these, it's like a modernist utopia nightmare. But then right in the middle of it, they have actually created these community allotment gardens. And you kind of have to, I had to ask permission and say, oh, I'm from a university to get in and all that. But when you went in, there was all these old kind of, and people who had their own gardens there, and they were all chatting to each other, and it was like finding this little gardening, farming oasis right in the middle of it. But again, that's something that was created by the Belediye as well. So there's so many different models to look at. There's so many different ways that these things work, and it's really worthwhile if you do want to do it, to try to find out about these things as well, to sort of do a little bit of research. But it does work. And again, I think that they are wonderful places as well for cultural organizations, for local artists to find spaces, to find people, to find a kind of people who have the same idea. If artists are talking about being interested in community, these are the sort of places where you can find the people who will talk the same language as you.
As I understand, it's great that we will have a garden. It's even the concept of these two words, urban gardening. It's a nice sentence, you know, in itself, because it's also romantic in a way. But as I understand, there's a need for collective action. Like you have to act collectively in a way in a neighborhood, and you don't have to have clear like responsibilities maybe, but when you act, you have to be able to act collectively. So because this Kuzgunchuk example is actually is telling me that if you somehow give this space to people, because it's coming from municipality, which is actually some sort of gentrification in a way, because municipality giving you this space to do something also, it doesn't work either. So because this kind of questions we've been asking in Darağaç as well, how we can allow people, the locals, to take over this bostan, this urban gardening, how they can participate in the process. So I want to share this example. We don't know how to do this, but we have an idea actually. So we have this car. It's an old car. You saw this car actually. It's a car painted with many colors inside. So we are thinking about making this whole car turning this whole car into a pot that we can grow herbs. And we thought maybe we can tell to garage owners, like shop owners, that we will grow their mezes in this car. So we thought maybe this can turn into some sort of collective action. I mean, because we are trying to find ways to how they can participate in the process. But in Hande's situation, because she started growing her own vegetables and fruits in her balcony, and can we say this is like fruits for the future? Because this is an approach as well. You're growing fruits in your balcony, and how does this make you feel? I would like to ask, because this is an individual experience as well. You're not in a community; you're in your own balcony, and I'm curious. How do you feel about this? Because this is a different kind of action.
First of all, I'm very excited, and I don't know how to do it. I know anything about it. I am like quite nervous, but what Maquis Project started just clicked something in my mind, because I feel like when we look at today's world, everything is not going better, and in 12 years time or 30 years time, probably, I don't know, but it seems like it's going to be soon, we won't be able to find food this easily, like today. So I felt like I need to know this, I need to learn this, and I needed that connection with the earth itself in my life, in this period of my life, I realized that I'm feeling its absence. So even though I am living in a balcony, I thought I can do it. Tom came here with Ali Kemal, and they, offered many, things to put on the balcony, like the pots and stuff, and that opened a great, opportunities in my mind. So I decided to give it a try, to learn it and make it, because I think we all should do it. So maybe it's going to be a pilot project, in an apartment. We will see if it's going to happen. And if I can do it, if I can do it, everyone can do it. I can say this.
So you wouldn't have the problem of, okay, this fruit is dirty, I'm not going to eat this.
No, not at all, not at all.
This is
I
something
will
to think about.
embrace them.
How we can overcome this? You cannot go and explain your neighbors, saying that, okay, don't worry, this is not dirty. I mean, you can eat this. You cannot say this to your neighbors. So I'm also thinking how we can do this in Darağaç, because our neighborhood is not clean, let's say. So I don't know how they are going to consume the food, the fruit or vegetable.
I don't know. The first thing that comes to my mind is like organizing a picnic kind of thing from the fruits that you got from the crops, everything. So, and that will be only based on those crops, and that would be nice.
Yeah, that we can do this actually. Yeah, like make a whole dinner table made out of only from list, right? What do you think, Tom? Tom, do you think this would be something to do in Kemeraltı as well? Do you think this will work? And what do you think?
Well, I think it's the whole thing is really complex, but it's also really interesting as well. I mean, and again, since we started digging into this about a year ago or so, we have learned so much. We have learned so much, and actually, the first thing I would say to you in Darağaç is find your people. Go around the streets and find people who have lots of plants in front of their house. Don't talk about them and us. It's not the artists and the local people. It's all of you together. It's the gardeners. It's the people who sustain. It's the people who know how to look after things and sustain things. They're the ones you want. Go and say to them, you're growing lots of plants here. We're actually wanting to start this garden. Do you want to come down and talk to us about it? Find your people. That's the first thing I would say. And I would kind of say the same maybe. And I think we're not going to save the world at the moment with all of this. it's a conversation. It's such an important conversation, and it is a conversation about where our food comes from. It really is a conversation about where our food comes from, and it's a conversation that is much more evolved in other places. I know, like in the USA, they're planning to have 1 million urban farmers, not urban gardeners, but urban farmers. And there's a lot of stuff going on. I mean, there's even sort of, there are industrial scale urban farms now for, you know, kind of in Japan. I think something like 10% of lettuces are coming from very kind of industrialized, actually, but farms that are in the city center. So it's something that's coming, and it's really interesting as well, because I mean, for example, sorry, I know I'm going on, but this idea actually that a lot of people hate about the fact of, you know, these houses on big gardens, they're actually a huge opportunity for urban gardening, because if you have a big garden, you can actually become an urban farmer. You can become an urban farmer. And I know that, for example, there's an example in Australia that these kind of lot houses, these houses on large gardens, where a whole street got together, and they said, let's grow our own food and open up our gardens to each other. And they're this suburban street, and they grow all their own food now. Which is so there are huge opportunities there. City center, actually, it's kind of difficult, but and again, there's a focus, I think. I think you have to sort of start. How do you start, I think, is the question. Number one, find your people. Number two, start with the easy stuff. Herbs, greens, onions, spinach. Don't try stuff that's difficult. That's what I would say to you. Get the kids involved. That's a good thing, always. You know, I'm not quite sure how we can do that as well. I mean, again, I think you just have to keep doing it. Yeah, find your people. I think even from the point of view of like a Belediye project where they're creating the community garden, if we do that, we want to have a conversation with the Belediye that if there are like plots for different people, and they maybe talk to the previous examples in Istanbul, how do you actually get the people who will do it? Because it's really, and again and again, when I'm reading about sort of these community garden things that people have started, like one person was like, you know, we started with 20 people. For the last year, it's only me, my wife, and an 80-year-old woman that go to it, nobody else. So there is a kind of reality of who is going to garden it, who's going to actually turn up and do the physical work. And if you don't sort that out at the beginning, and if you don't think about that, you're going to end up disillusioned, you know. And I know, like me, we have decided here, for example, on a practical level, that we will keep pushing it on this street because it's relatively small, and it's, you know, we'll keep trying to get neighbors more involved, and hopefully it will evolve. But we're not. But as well as that, in the new gallery, we want to create a demonstration garden. So we are creating a garden that will be full of herbs. We also, actually, something that we are getting involved in as well is foraging. So something that we want to do is to we've already started bringing in wild edibles from the wild. We have about 5 different wild edibles growing in our garden now that normally would only grow out in the parks and in the fields and everything like that. So we also want to have them growing in the new demonstration garden. So on Saturdays, we will have like a morning of talking about particular foods, like, I mean, mallow, Alexander's, pellitory, all of these different foods. And they're wonderful. It's amazing, the sort of stuff that just grows on the sides of the streets and in the parks. It's absolutely incredible, so it is. And so one of the things we want to do is almost kind of become this kind of like, I hate education, because another thing, people don't know how to grow stuff. No, they don't know how to grow stuff. No idea whatsoever. And we don't. I mean, it's like sort of, what the hell are we doing now? Should we be planting stuff? Should we be seeding stuff? Are we supposed to be fertilizing? You know, there's so much stuff that we just don't know. It's people think that it's in our genes. Oh yes, we can grow stuff. You know, we can't. It's specialist knowledge. It's really specialist knowledge. You know, and so yeah, and that's another thing as well. We're trying to do this thing as well. I'm working with an artist, Angela. And we're hoping to, we've already done like a planting guide for autumn. In the next week, we're going to be doing a planting guide for spring, telling you when to get your plants in and everything like that. So again, it's, you know, kind of, we also want to get something for, it's a little bit trickier with the whole foraging thing, because we don't want to print something and then somebody eats something that's poisoned that looks like something that we did a drawing for. So, you know, we don't really want that to happen either. So, but certainly, so we want to develop that as well. We're working with Angela. She's hoping maybe to get funding from the Irish Embassy in Ankara, get them to support that as well, where we will create a book eventually in about a year or two's time, just for Izmir. How the hell do you do these things in Izmir? So that getting the knowledge together, it's crazy. It's crazy, you know, kind of what we just don't know.
Yeah, what came to my mind, actually, maybe, I mean, imagine that you have this kind of urban gardening projects going on in the city, done by either a collective or just some people with only the neighborhoods, you know, the locals initiative, maybe some sort of solidarity, I don't know, solidarity, how can I say, like a kind of a platform that you can share your seeds, that you can share your, maybe your harvest or your equipment, soil even, maybe this could be possible as well in the future, like having some sort of a network of urban.
That's what we want to do as well. On the Saturday mornings when we're doing these conversations, we will also be giving, we're already giving stuff from our garden. Other people like Angela is always giving me stuff. So we already have a little network. I mess with up the street, we swap plants with him as well. So that kind of happens organically. But Ali Cem, you got to be gardening first.
I know.
You ain't going to be able to swap your seed unless you got some seed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We know, yeah. We will start as soon as possible, let's say. But, you know, this Cemre thing, that the first one, the second Cemre, and the third Cemre, I don't know what is it, how do you say this in English, but the Cemre falling, like the indication of spring, the spring is coming. So I don't know what it is, but they say if the third one has already, you know, fall, that means you're already late. So we are kind of late, but...
Bullshit.
Know, right?
Mediterranean, you are basically, you are totally colonized. Do you know that? Because you were basically talking about Northwest European farming and USA farming, where it finishes in autumn because of the climate. You don't live in that climate, Ali Cem.
Of course. We will plant whatever we have. You know that.
The winter is the best time to sow your cabbages and your greens in Izmir. Yeah. We actually for the last, we sowed cabbages and leeks, and we had mallow, and we had lettuce. Lettuce grow during the winter here. This was amazing for me coming from Ireland, that you can have lettuce in your garden in the middle of the winter. Chard, Swiss chard, all of that stuff. The Mediterranean climate is perfect. Everybody hibernates here, and they go by. They've all been watching American gardening films, and I don't know, in Pride and Prejudice, you know, they all go into their houses and nothing happens during the frost of the winters. That's not. This is the Mediterranean climate here. The winter is the best time to sow your plants and to harvest your plants. So you're wrong, Ali Cem. Sorry, I'm
Yeah, we will do that. Eventually we will do that.
Actually, but seriously, I mean, for the last like 3 months here, we have been, every single week we get cabbages, we get Brussels sprouts, and again, there's so much we learned as well. Like, I mean, and we have been destroyed by consumer farming and consumer food practices. There was something, for example, you think of a cabbage.
Yeah.
You think of a cabbage as this one thing that you buy in the market. Okay. And that's how you buy it. That's how you get it. That's how you eat it. That is completely and absolutely wrong. When you have a cabbage in your garden, you can get 2 months of meals from that single cabbage. You buy it in a store and you have it for 2 meals, because there's this thing where you harvest the lower leaves of a cabbage when it's growing. The cabbage is coming up to become this big thing at the top. As it's growing, you keep taking the leaves from the bottom. There's a word for it which I can't remember. And you can constantly eat from things like that. So there's all these little tricks that people knew in the past, and they don't know anymore, because we think food is what we buy in the shops. A lettuce thing is just like this. No, it's not. A cabbage is a thing that you can be getting cabbage leaves for over 2 months from a single cabbage. So just as an example, there is so much food you can get from your own garden. And again, mainly greens. You know, we ain't, you know, kind of, if you've got a small garden, you ain't going to be able to do potatoes and carrots, but greens and herbs. Greens, herbs, and during the summer, tomatoes and cucumbers and things like that. Yeah. So I'm talking too much, Ali Cem. I'm going to shut up now.
No, the last thing that I would like to say, in our urban garden, one of the main focuses, let's say the main focus is focusing on vegetables and herbs that you can make mezes. So meze, when we say we are going to grow meze stuff to the neighbors, to the locals, they got really excited. So this is something that, at least this is something to focus on when we would like to plant our stuff. We will say, okay, we are growing these, we are going to make meze out of these. So when we say that, they are really excited. So we are going to focus on that too. So we are coming to an end of our panel. Hande, would you like to say something? What do you say? I mean, when you're going to have the harvest?
Hopefully in summertime, but we will see. The seeds are, you know, very small right now, and you know, we will see. Actually, I wanted to talk a little bit about my own experience with the two communities and how did it all started. And I want to be a little bit romantic, if you let me.
Please.
I am like taking on this role intentionally, and I will praise both Darağaç and Maquis projects. And I think we have some time, right?
Yeah, we have time. Don't worry.
I want to go back a little bit before all the gardening stuff was invented. I was, you know, I want to talk about how it all started for me briefly, and my first landing into the community of Izmir, and that was around 2014. And before that, I was just a random person who was interested in contemporary art, but I wasn't aware of what was actually going on around me, you know, in the city where I lived. And it was right after a huge change in my personal life. And one night, a very close friend of mine, Esen Kara, she invited me to an opening in a venue called Maquis Project. And that evening, I was first introduced to the community for the first time. And I remember how fascinating that night was for me. It was I was very surprised, actually, and happy to see a lot of like-minded and open-minded people. And that night, I felt so liberated and very good, actually, after so many stuff that I've been going through. And I couldn't leave the place, you guys remember, and started to help to clean up the space after the event, like picking up the wine bottles and ashtrays and so on. And yeah, so Maquis Projects is really in a neighborhood most of us as Izmirians both know very well, but also don't know enough. It is in the very center of the city, you know, in the grand open bazaar, historical bazaar called Kemal Ertem. And everyone goes there, like every time. We all go there every time. But it is one of the most, you know, it is the craziest places in Izmir and maybe in Turkey as well. However, we're mostly unaware of the treasures waiting there to be discovered, you know. And the location of Maquis Project is so thought to be, as you guys told earlier, thought to be unsafe, like back streets of Kemal Ertem, and you know, and the events of Maquis Projects and going there for those events changed all my prejudices, you know. It helps me a lot in becoming aware of what was going on around me, actually. And in the course of time, we became very close friends, and I was there in every opening, and at some point I found myself managing the social media accounts, and I was trying to support the resident artists with their local needs, and maybe sometimes acting like a, you know, as an informal host there. And I was willing to reduce Ali Kemal and Tom's burden as much as I could, you know. I was too happy to be there, you know. And from my point of view, by just the presence of Maquis Project, I had a new perspective towards, you know, acknowledging the authenticity of the city. It was a meeting point of many people. It was very welcoming for everyone, and it was so nice to be talking about art, supporting each other in many areas of life, and anyone who were there had the chance to meet each other, exchange ideas, connect to each other, and become just friends, you know, while enjoying the ongoing exhibition. And most of the I want to say this because it is real, and most of the residential artists that came to Maquis projects were from abroad, you know. And considering the conditions of a regular person living in Turkey, it's not always very easy for us to go to travel and explore the contemporary art scene or any cultural scene in other countries, you know. However, people coming to the events of Maquis projects, no matter what their cultural background was, they were all there in that venue, in the heart of Kemeraltı, exploring their surroundings from the eyes of a foreign artist and exchanging ideas. It was amazing. It was a great opportunity. And I was so lucky to be a part of that creative process, actually, you know, so I'm so very grateful. Thank you, guys. and I want to say something about Darağaç because it has a very unique place in my heart. And I was there as both an insider and outsider, and these people were my closest friends, and I was one of their audience, actually. And I know everything from the beginning, and I have been witnessing their precious journey since the first exhibition. Starting from there, the collective kept inspiring both local and international audience, and it's a very inspirational and authentic journey, I may say. And I remember the first exhibition in 2016. There were 12 artists. 2 of them were the shop owners working in the neighborhood. It looked like a simple, fun event, but everyone took it very seriously, and it turned out to be a very powerful, unusual, and a very interesting event, actually. And getting to know each other, the artists, the locals, the visitors, and all of the people that were there, that triggered some kind of ideal, I guess, like living and creating together is an inclusive space, you know. So it was another grateful thing for me. And there, of course, there are some mutual aspects of Darağaç and Maquis projects from, you know, my point of view. They're both in the very center of the city, but located in the parts of the city center that people don't normally go, you know. This is because people are not aware of those areas, or like somehow feel intimidated to go, you know. And I think all of the people, you know, the perspective, all the people that go to those places has changed a lot this is again by the help of Darağaç and Maquis projects. So they're both connecting people and bringing them together via contemporary art. They're both very welcoming, and even if you come from a different background, it's easy to discover your potential or become friends and new friends. And experiencing all of these and being exposed to these communities actually added so much to my quality of life. And I want to give some examples of that. Like, I've developed my social media skills, and I have become very interested in contemporary photography, and which is now one of my biggest passions. And I have become a part of a local alternative city guide called Local, and there I had the opportunity to take roles as an editor and event organizer, and that was one of my most fruitful experiences, of my life. And we founded Street Disco. It's an ongoing project. We organize parties where we connect electronic music and digital arts. Me, Ali Kemal, and Steph Galia, an architect and the DJ. We love street disco a lot, and we are thinking of alternative ways to organize another event soon in today's conditions. And I hope we will be back soon. And last but not the least, I am nourished from this community a lot in my daily job, in my profession. What I write in the course books, I am very much inspired by the processes I am going through. So I'm really grateful for that. And then, I just want to thank you, the community, Maquis Project, Darağaç, the amberNetworkFestival, for the opportunity to contribute to this event and share my feelings tonight. Thank you, guys. That's all.
Thank you, Hande. So, but as you can see, you end up on the street like all of us. The street disco, say it all.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for all this, for being here with us. And I would like to speak more, but I think we are coming to an end. So thank you, Kemal. Thank you
for inviting.
Yeah.
Ali Cem.
Can I just say one more thing? I just want to say that I think something that's kind of came out tonight in this talk is that there's not lots of different collectives here. There is actually one collective in Izmir, which kind of is because we all know each other. Streets, kind of Maquis, Darağaç, the street disco stuff, Local. We've all actually, we're kind of like one big collective, actually.
Yeah, it's like Quarantina, Nomad.
And it's a wonderful thing.
They're all collective.
We should build on it. We really should build on that, the strength that we have through the connections that we already have. We all have different ways of looking at things, but nonetheless, there's a really good community, as Hande just said, and really good connections and sort of social, emotional infrastructure there. So we should build on that and recognize it.
Thank you, Tom. This gives me goosebumps, to be honest. I mean, I feel really nice when I think this way. I think you're right. This is something to hang on to. Yeah. So thank you for our audience to be here with us today. So briefly, let me explain. We have 3 more events of Darağaç in the following days. I will give you the dates only. In the 2nd of April, we will have Sounds of Darağaç project's launch event in the neighborhood. This will be live streaming. In the 3rd of April, we will have Sounds of Darağaç panel. We will have Aperion Collective and Lou Records with us. And we will talk about the timeline of this project, Sounds of Darağaç project, and we will have a conversation together. And in this 12th of April, we will have live performance event, mural painting event with Ali Kanal and Suat İlyas. This will be a 4-day event. It will be broadcasted live. And we will share the links with our social media accounts. So thank you for being here with us. See you soon. Bye. Bye Tom, bye Kemal. See you guys.